Okay, so I became a figurehead because of white guilt, long story short. And I think what I did to do that, I guess, was I was just really consistent in what I thought. And I took a lot of time to educate myself and really understand who I was and how that made sense in the broader scope of society. And then I took that education and started telling other people in Montclair, like, they're not, like, I started telling black people, like, we're not really, like, they don't with us here. So I started communicating to other people with low socioeconomic status. Like, Montclair is a really hard place, I think, to be an activist because people sort of assume that everything is painted over and everything's beautiful here. So it was really hard for me to get people activated because of that level of complacency. But I think just by communicating with people who were a part of marginalized communities, like people who were black, people who were immigrants, people who were low, who were a part of poor families like mine, I really had to communicate to them, like, whatever you think should be happening, like, we deserve more. So I think just by empowering myself and my community and being consistent with it, when Montclair couldn't hide behind that idea of being super perfect and socially conscious, they just ran to the only person or one of the people that they know that were super adamant about calling it out. And I think I got involved in social justice because I was like, yay, this is something that makes me feel whole, and through this I can find a community and I could better understand how to make an impact, like, later on once I have that foundation. But I think if anything, social justice in Montclair or me being an activist has sort of worked against me, because I feel like because I have this education, instead of finding a community, people are just further pushing me to the front. And so I'm like constantly lacking. That foundation that I was talking about earlier is something that's like really, really important for social justice to be effective. And at first, like I said, social justice makes you feel so good about yourself when you first get into it because you feel super moral and you have a purpose. And I used to really like that people would come to me with all their problems, but how do I say this nicely? It's an insult sometimes when I make my availability very known, but still I feel like it doesn't matter how much of an impact I make. I still think that just as a black woman, people think that like I should be thankful for opportunities that they're giving me, even though I really could care less if I had them or not. And I don't know. I just think also me just being a young person, I don't think people are super respectful of my time. And I really, like you said, I do have that moral obligation to help a person, just because, and I'm going to reference being a black woman a lot because that's just a trait that I think a lot of black women have been taught to have, to just be very subservient. So all of that mixed in, it's really hard for me to set that boundary, but I think it's really necessary as an activist. I think it's revolutionary to be like, I'm so sorry, I have to prioritize this thing that I'm committed to and maybe help you find resources for another person, but I have to value myself and value my time. I second guess myself a lot. I got diagnosed with anxiety and PTSD when I was, 15, 16. And I thought that having those, for a lot of people, having those diagnoses like help. And, because you are able to put a name to it and minimize it. But for me, it like freaked me out even more because I was like, now that I know what my mental health is or what my diagnosis is, like I felt like I had to fulfill all these different obligations again, like I usually would as an activist. So I don't know, I would just feel really pressured to talk about my anxiety and try to incorporate that, or talk about my PTSD and incorporate that. And it's just like constantly feeling like you have to do something before really checking in with yourself, ultimately like really I think would negatively impact like anybody. But it just impacts me mostly in a way where I don't really trust myself all the time, but it's confusing because that's what you need when you're being pushed to the front and you really have to speak for other people, like the ability to trust yourself to make an impact. At first, I thought that by helping other people that would help me, not like help me get anything in particular, but I just meant that, like, to feel fulfilled, I thought that that's what it would be. And for a long time, that's what I did feel that way. But I very much, like, separated my identity from the issues that I was advocating for. So, like, when I led that march, the BLM march, I didn't feel like a black person, you know? I just felt like I couldn't really be a black person. And I feel like, I don't know, whenever I'm advocating for an issue that directly impacts me, I don't let myself really think of myself as another person being impacted, just because I don't have the luxury to, and that would cause me a lot of pain, and I can't really express that pain the way that people would want me to. But I think now, this is like I said earlier, it's like a new transition for me, so I'm going to try my best to do that more often. But I think I always just try to do something like revolutionary every day, or I just try to be a social justice person every day. And I'm just trying to, like, remember more and more that, like, self-care is something that's super revolutionary, because my rest and me being recharged and feeling fulfilled, like, as all these isms and all these marginalized groups I'm a part of, like, that's not normal. Like, that challenges something. I think I do the same thing to myself. Because, like, now is the time for me to go to college and write a personal statement. And I've written about 12 draft essays, and all of them are about activism. And, like, great, it's a huge foundation of who I am, and I'm so grateful to have that aspect of my identity. But like you said, it's, like, dehumanizing. That's not all that I am. And I think that from May to today has been, like, insanely hard for me, because of that moral obligation to just consume my entire life with activism. So I know that there are parts of me that I'd really like to go back to expressing. I do a lot of photography. I tell a lot of jokes. I don't know, eat really bomb-ass food from Trader Joe's. I go to Trader Joe's just to see the cute hippie people and maybe get the numbers and maybe don't. Like, there's a person in here, you know? She messes up and she says stupid stuff and she makes mistakes. Wait, tell me that wouldn't be a fire-ass Hannah Montana song lyric. What are you thinking? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a person inside. So before everybody needs to start thinking of me as a person, but I have to do that myself first. So I think, like, after this has been a really great space for me to think more about who I am, and I'm glad that I have this space to do this. But I think before I ask other people to stop doing that to me, I have to first do that to myself. And that's going to require, like, a lot of introspection to heal from so much that's happened, like, over the past couple months. Stop feeling so bad and just recognize that your joy is revolutionary, because it really is. Like, when I don't tell a lot of people this, but when I organized that march, the day after, I went back to the park and I cried. Like, and not happy cry, like, literally, like, this was so painful for me to do, and I didn't even get to see it. Like, people tell me how great it was, and I literally did not go. Like, I don't know what people are talking about, because I spread myself so thin, and I let so many people take from me. And even then, I thought the Unity Walk was awful. I thought that I didn't do, like, it wasn't, but, like, my brain told me that it was literally the most counterproductive event that was for the Black Lives Matter movement, and it just hurt so bad. Like, thinking that I played a role in doing that. I just felt like it was just a shitty feeling. And so since, like, that pain and that, you know, fear to be like, I am the person that I was fighting against, like, literally immobilized me for 2 months. Like, I couldn't run, I couldn't eat food that I liked. I just felt like I didn't deserve it. I don't know. And it just sucked ass. And I just want to tell, like, anybody who goes through that period of guilt just because they spoke up and just because they didn't fit the norm, like, I just really want people to know that there's nothing to feel guilty about, and that they should really, really prioritize their joy after doing something so impactful. Like, I don't believe myself and I don't believe my friends when they tell me that I'm a cool person and that I make an impact and stuff. But I'm going to try and start believing it, because it's really important for other marginalized people to really, really, really believe, like, how much, I was gonna say how fire they are, but I was like, no, not the vibe. But just to realize like how great they are and how important it is to see them like happy to be themselves.